Hello, everyone. My name is Winston, and welcome to today's Road to PDC sharing session. This is a series of online events that lead up to Tech in Asia's Product Development Conference 2021 that will be held actually this week, very soon, Wednesday and Thursday, 7th and 8th April. So in this series of events leading up to PDC itself, we have invited professionals in the product development scene to share their insights, their experiences, and maybe that can help you a little bit in your day-to-day work as well. So our topic for today is infusing analytical DNA into product design. And we have Amber Liang, Senior Product Manager at Lazada, here to tell us all about it. Hello and welcome, Amber. And thank you for joining us today. Could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Winston, for introduction. I'm very happy to be here today to share my insight and experience from working in product in Lazada. So myself, as a product manager, I have worked on productivity tool within the e-commerce space. And for some of you that haven't heard of Lazada, Lazada is one of the largest online marketplace in Southeast Asia. So we are serving millions of online buyers on a daily basis. And my tool that I am focused on in Lazada is to build productivity within our users to help them to have actionable insight and to improve their productivity over time. So that's the gist of the product I am focusing on. And before I become product manager, I was a business intelligence analyst. So I had a transition from learning how to utilize data to become a product manager. So that experience was valuable for me. And if any of you are looking to transition from, say, a BI role or analyst role to a product manager, feel free to reach out to me. I can share more about my experience.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of Lazada, so no worries about that. All right. So just to give the audience a quick rundown, we will start with a presentation from Amber herself, and then we will finish up with a Q&A segment. So if at any point during the presentation you have any questions, please feel free to submit it into the chat feature, and we will get to them towards the end of the session. So without any further ado, let us begin. Amber, you're up.
Sounds great. So thank you so much for joining today. I'd like to open my presentation to talk about some of the common pitfalls that we will see when we are working on an analytical product. And I think by using a pitfall as a start point, we can all focus on the things that people will usually go through when they create an analytical product. So one of the things that we commonly encounter is when we talk about big data, we think about the more, the better, the more, the merrier. However, when we are looking at how users are consuming information, that's not really the case. So a lot of time when you are crowded your user with a lot of user interface or with a lot of data, that would be counterintuitive for the user. So from the very start, you want to focus on what's important to the users, what is the business goal, and how to help them to make the decision easier, more efficient. So what is some of the best practice that I want to share with you today? I think I want to summarize into 4 bullet points that would help you to understand what are the key takeaway that you will get from this presentation. So from my past experience, I would definitely say that for number one, when you're looking at your product, your focus should be on the impacts and how to using the trend line to help your user to understand, build a narrative that the user can immediately, when they see the data, they can have a better insights. So take e-commerce as an example. What is impactful for a e-commerce, for online marketplace? It could be the daily active user. Your product is helping to drive the daily active users. It could be the sales. We're looking at the number, how many sales you can generate for each of the campaigns. So these are very impactful numbers that when you're building a product, regardless analytical or else, you have to focus on your impacts. And another thing is the trend. So what I'm talking about trend here is a lot of time when we are delivering report, we're looking at absolute number. So say if I'm looking at a category, say home and living, the sales of home and living has a large absolute value. But however, if I'm comparing the trend line over year and year, I did not see that growth compared to other category, then that says some stories of the analysis that you have that's simply based on absolute value. Hence, trends is important when you build an analytical product. And then the second part, slice and dice. So what I meant by slice and dice, when you're tackling a complex problem, most of our business problem today is very complex. So you want to deconstruct your information into smaller parts that people can understand and they can compare against each other to be able to produce more information out of it. And number three, you should always have a framework in mind. And this framework should be comprehensive across your organization. And at the same time, since you are working with multiple stakeholders in your company, it could be your engineering team, it could be your sales, could be your UI design team. All of them, if without a shared framework, it would be very difficult for people to communicate, to understand each other on a level that will help the company to grow. So having a framework in mind is important, but also having a evolving framework is also something that we should keep in mind. Every product is an evolving organism. You should always keep in mind that today you have the sets of impacts KPI you are driving today. However, in the next couple months, things can change. So your framework should be able to iterate over time. Number four, we should always have benchmark. When we are measuring our progress over time, we have a set of benchmark to measure against. And that is something a lot of time we would forget when we are executing our plans. We will forget to have such a benchmark to help us to look at how we have performed over time, what's the progress, what's the strengths and weakness. And that will really help to drive a continuous growth and to improve ourselves over time. So these are the 4 points. I think they are very crucial and they help me a lot throughout my product design of the productivity tool I'm building in Lazada. So in the next bit, I want to share a bit of the product strategy. So when we say product strategy, a lot of time we think of the overarching principle and almost a guiding principles that help you to see your product roadmap for a long period of time instead of immediate results. So I think it's always important for any product manager to have the strategy in mind. That is something that will guide you through the journey. And for the product strategy, I think there are 2 areas we should be focusing on. One is, yes, having the guiding principle to help you to go through the different iteration of your product. You know what's your long-term goal and how to get there. And you should also be able to break it down into incremental steps. So every quarter, you know that by end of each quarter, you would hit what milestone. And at the end of the day, that will bring you to your ultimate goal, to your overall product strategy. And here I have 3 bullet points I want to share. So number 1 is, as product manager, you should be having constant meeting with your business development team. Understand your business operations. What is the key business goals sitting in your business? So say for e-commerce, a lot of time we're focusing on getting more users. And we're also going to increase our sales over time. So some of these are the key business goals. And whenever I am building any product and whenever I'm building, having the product design, I should be fulfilling this business goal. And if anything that's out of the picture, then they are likely to be deprioritized. And at the same time, we should understand our users. So I think that is something we tend to miss a lot of time for product manager because of the sheer amount of work we have, and also the users are always behind the scene. And as a product manager, you should be proactive to reach out to your user to understand their business pain point and how they're using your product to benefit the users. And so the way that I would that I have been practicing in my organization would be, I would set up a monthly user feedback meeting. So through a monthly meeting, I'll be able to gather user insights. And then I'd be able to reiterate my product based on what my users really needs. So these are the things that I hope you can take away, and that will help you to build a better product strategy. So the next part is I want to talk about how we can supercharge business decision using analytical product. So I had set the groundwork of what are the strategy that we usually have in mind when we're building product. And the next step is what are some of the useful framework that I can share with you that can help you to supercharge. So I want to begin with something very simple, right? So when we're looking at tackle any business scenario, any business case, we have the two worlds. One is our user. They are the one that have expert knowledge on the ground. And they are the one that's driving the sales on the ground. They are driving the category growth on the ground. And on the other hand, we have our very robust data infrastructure. So in my organization, we have a very capable data warehouse team, and then they will constantly collecting, aggregating, and analyzing data. So these are the powerful engine that's running on a daily basis. And as an analytical product, we need to merge these two. We need to find the best of the two worlds, and to make an analytical product that's fusing what is being to collect and aggregate from the data infrastructure, at the same time to combine with expert knowledge we have on the ground. So that is something I would always refer to when I'm tackling problem. And I want to talk a bit about the actionable insights here. So we have actionable insight. We heard of this multiple times, but what it really meant here in building an analytical product, it really is you are serving a business function, you're serving a business needs. So you have to start by understanding what exactly is the business pain point and what's the processes you are trying to tackle here using the data that you have today. And you shall be able to build a narrative that people can quickly understand. Say if one of my productivity tools provide a category analysis to my internal users. So for example, just take a hypothetical scenario. Say the product module is able to predict that in the next quarter, home and living category would have a year-on-year growth of 20%. And at the same time, the productivity tool is able to advise the category manager that because the work from home trend has been throughout 2020, 2021, and the demand of office chair is likely to grow in the next quarter. And so the likely action for the category manager is to work with the sellers to increase the supplies of certain type of chair. And so by having that information, our category manager is able to work with our seller to drive the sales. And at the same time, it benefits the seller to increase their growth. So that is something very actionable for the category manager and together work with the seller. However, if my productivity tool is simply giving the information of home and living would be growing in 2021 for 20%, and that information is not actionable for my category manager, she or he probably have to spend extra time to analyze this information, and then they will probably have some conclusions of what to do next. So that is building a narrative that become very crucial when you are working on any analytical product feature. And the last bit is always remember that your product is not static. It would change based on what the business needs, what the business demands change. So you should be prepared for iterations over time. And simply because of the nature of e-commerce, we can see massive changes just simply in a few months' time. So you have to make sure that your product is able to meet that demands and to able to serve as many users as you can, having a scalable solutions. So you might have the questions now that I've shared all these frameworks and all the lessons. Then what would be the impacts, right, to the product itself? Like, what's the result I've been getting applying all these principles? So I want to share a little bit of the number. And since we have very short amount of time, I just want to flesh out the results basically of my personal product, that how it had performed in 2020. So there are 3 areas I'm focusing on. As an internal software, productivity software, we are looking at the user growth, so daily active user, the productivities, how many tasks we automated over time, and then the impact, which is on the sales coverage of the e-commerce online marketplace. So because of the principles that we are able to apply, and also thanks to all the teams that are working really hard across the engineering, user design, we're able to achieve a 4.7 times growth in terms of the users within the year of 2020. And we're able to automate a lot of tasks at the same period of time. So it's around a 2.6 times. In terms of sales impacts, I'm looking at the coverage of the sales. It's a 3.1 times growth for the period before 2020 to 2020. So I want to share with you this data because I want to give you some example of how using this principle, we will be able to drive an accelerating growth within our organizations, and that will benefit your organization, and that would hit your business objectives better. And so before we close my presentation, I want to leave this with you. It's a few checklists that I deem very useful for my practice when I working on any product design and product strategy. So I think we should always start with understanding the pain point. Before you build any product, you should be able to using a few sentences to say that what exactly is the problem you're trying to address here. So that will show that you do understand what's the business pain point and what you're trying to address. And then you should focus on understanding what's the key business goal here, whether your product design is aligning with the key business goals that your company is driving. And when you're building product, when you're designing feature, they should be able to fulfill all these goals. And then at the end of the day, as your user, you are product manager to serve your user, you should be able to tell who are your user. It would be great if you know them by name. Then you are able to better fuse your product to serve their need. And at the end of the day, it would be great that you can address some of the common pitfalls that I have shared. So that would help you to avoid making the same mistake that I have made. And at the same time, apply the best practice. That would help you to fast track your product launching, and that will help you to prove that your solution would be constructive to your business goal. So these are the few bullet points I would like to share with you, and I really hope this has been helpful for you. And thank you very much. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber. Thank you for sharing all those great insights. I learned a lot. Personally, as someone coming from a more of a content background, I really could understand when you talk about, don't just focus on data points, build a narrative, right? That's how you can really come up with some really great insights from that. So we do have some questions from the audience, and we will be getting into the Q&A section very shortly. But first, I would like to let the audience know that, as an attendee of these Road to PDC sessions, you can get a discounted ticket actually for PDC itself. Can get one for only $15. That saves you $35 off the original price. So to do that, to get that discount, just go to pdc.techinasia.com/road2. That's ROADTO. And apply the coupon code that you can see on the screen right now, Road to PDC, to enjoy the offer. All right. So with that out of the way, let's get to the questions. Firstly, we have one from Nuning Saptiana. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Okay, so Amber, you mentioned before about having a framework, an evolving framework. What Nuning wants to ask about exactly is, do you have an example of such a framework? What framework did you use, and how did you keep it from being too static?
So I think that's a great question, and I like to answer by using something very common in the e-commerce space. When we talk about the how well the feature has performed in terms of e-commerce is conversion. We care about the conversion funnel. So that is a very common framework that is adopted by all the product team, all the sales, and all the engineering team. And that could be, I would say that's a common framework that we all share, regardless which team we're coming from. So I think depending on what line of business you are coming from, essentially you need to find that common framework that everyone is aligning with, so they can build their strategy, they can build their KPI upon that framework.
Right. So it's something that is relevant to just about everyone, so that everyone can use it. It doesn't gatekeep the processes from others. All right. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Nuning. Thank you for sending that in. Number 2, we have one from Edward Sonaris. He's asking, what kind of data do you use, or how do you make sure that you get data that can help you make actionable, to gather actionable insights, and not just, because with a lot of data, there can be a lot of noise, right? How do you make sure that the data that you have and the data that you use can be used to put together actionable insights?
I think that question, so when you are looking at any problem, right? So say actionable data, it has to address certain business process. So I think the best way to tackle this question is really to understand, say for back to my example, online e-commerce, what is the business problem I'm trying to solve here? What is the process that I want to optimize? Say I'm looking at predicting the next best category to add more inventories. Then that is then you need some sort of data point to be able to address that problem. So I think the first step is to understand what's your business process. And second is whether you have the data that's available. Sometimes you might not have the data within your organization. You have to buy the data, you have to scrape the data. And then once you have all these available data, you can start your analysis and see what are the things you can extract from that that you collect. And then you have to work, at the end of the day, you have to work with your business team to see how this can fit into their workflow. So I think it should always start with the business, not the data. The data is a tool to help us to understand better, getting insights.
I see. Okay. So you mentioned a point there about working with your business team to make sure everyone's on board, the same driving towards the same destination. On a related note, how does analytics help you in managing demands from other stakeholders? You talked a lot about understanding the user, but there's also internal stakeholders and maybe other kinds of stakeholders. How does analytics help you to manage demands from all these different sources, and help you to work on your help you work on your product?
Yeah, I think there's one thing I didn't really highlight in the presentation is, as a product manager, we would always want to have scalable solution. So regardless which team you're coming from, what kind of merchandise you manage, there should be a sort of a universal workflow that you can extract from all these varieties of business activities. And having that in mind, you can build scalable product. So say for predicting sales, that is something very crucial for not just home and living category. It could be for fashion, could be for electronic. So having that in mind, you can build an analytical product that can serve all the varieties that you have in the e-commerce space. And I think the same can apply to other industry.
Okay, all right. All right, and I think we will have one last question. We are almost out of time right now. From Haniko Martin, right? They are asking, what is the biggest difference, in your opinion, between being a data analyst versus a product manager when you talk about analyzing data?
Being a data analyst versus product manager in analyzing a data. So I think the question here could be, so the process of building an analytical product, right? You have to start by understanding your business process. You have to be able to build a data pipeline that will support the product. So it's very different job. I mean, they are not comparable, but then at the same time, there will be shared, I would say, tasks that you might have as a data analyst. You do need to slice and dice the data. Yes, you do that. But then as a product manager, that is simply a way for me to understand how data work and how I can leverage that information to build an analytical product. So I think they have shared tasks in a way, but they're very different job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the product manager is about taking the insights after the slicing and dicing and then doing something with that, right?
Right. So product manager leverage that that activity. So that activity can be automated using product.
Okay. So that was the final question. We're almost out of time. Thank you everyone for attending this session today with us, listening to us. Again, just a reminder to everyone who has been attending these Road to PDC sessions. Don't forget, you can get the discounted ticket, $15 only, right? That's saving $35 off the original price. So remember, you can get it today by applying the coupon code Road to PDC at pdc.techinasia.com/road2. You can see all the relevant URLs and the coupon code right on your screen right now. So once again, thank you for joining us today, for your questions. And of course, Amber, thank you for joining us and sharing all your insights and knowledge.
Thank you so much.
All right. So hope to see everyone again at the Product Development Conference itself. Remember, it's this Wednesday and Thursday, 7th and 8th April. Take care.